Breaking tonight, the first and only vice presidential debate is now in the books. And while both campaigns are saying their guy scored the most points, a lot of debate watchers are expressing frustration with what at times became a free-for-all. Welcome to a special live 11 p.m. edition of the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. Thanks for staying up late. Reporting tonight from Longwood University in Farmville, Virginia. The two candidates left this stage about 20 minutes ago. They covered a lot of ground tonight and spent a lot of time talking about the top of the ticket. From the insults to the economy, foreign policy, and policing, there was very little left behind. And here is some of that.
We trust Hillary Clinton as president and commander-in-chief, but the thought of Donald Trump as commander-in-chief scares us to death.
Senator, you and Hillary Clinton would know a lot about an insult-driven campaign.
Under Secretary Clinton's leadership, she was part of the national team, public safety team, that went after and revived the dormant hunt against bin Laden and wiped him off the face of the earth. And instead of 175,000 American troops deployed overseas, we now have 15,000.
Right, and
these are very, very.
And Iraq has been overrun by ISIS.
If you want to have a society where people are respected and respect laws, you can't have somebody at the top who demeans every group that he talks about.
If Donald Trump had said all the things that you said he said, in the way you said he said them, he still wouldn't have a fraction of the insults that Hillary Clinton leveled when she said that half of our supporters were a basket of deplorables. Senator, please, enough of this seeking every opportunity to demean law enforcement broadly by making the accusation of implicit bias every time tragedy occurs.
Elaine, people shouldn't be afraid to bring up issues of bias in law enforcement.
I think the fact that under this past administration, of which Hillary Clinton was a part, we've almost doubled the national debt, is atrocious. In the wake of a season where American families are struggling in this economy, under the weight of higher taxes and Obamacare and the war on coal and the stifling avalanche of regulation coming out of this administration, Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want more of the same.
The terrorist threat has decreased in some ways because bin Laden is dead. The terrorist threat has decreased in some ways because an Iranian nuclear weapons program has been stopped. The terrorist threat to United States troops has been decreased in some ways because there's not 175,000 in a dangerous part of the world. There's only 15,000, but there are other parts of the world that are challenging.
After traveling millions of miles as our Secretary of State, after being the architect of the foreign policy of this administration, America is less safe today than it was the day that Barack Obama became president of the United States. It's absolutely inarguable.
We have a big show lined up for you tonight. Donald Trump's campaign manager, Kellyanne Conway, is here. So is Hillary Clinton's national press secretary, Brian Fallon. We'll also get Charles Krauthammer's key takeaways and so much more. But we begin the night with Chris Stirewalt, our Fox News digital politics editor, and Howie Kurtz, host of Media Buzz on Fox News. Great to see you both.
Howdy.
Chris, your thoughts?
No hits, no runs, no errors. They did their job, which was to not make news. I think Pence had a better night. Kaine was interrupty, overmodulated, too hot coming in, couldn't quite settle down. But look, they were here to not harm the ticket, and they did their jobs, and they can walk out with their heads held
Before
high.
we get to Howie, on the subject of interrupty. Here is a flavor of that.
You both have said Vladimir Putin is a better
we're going to get to Russia in just a moment.
He's employed tens of thousands of people in this country.
And paid a few taxes and lost $1 billion a year. You are Donald Trump's apprentice. Let me talk about this
Senator,
issue
I think I'm still on my time.
Well, I think, isn't this a discussion?
This is our open discussion.
Let's talk about this.
Let me interrupt you and finish my sentence if I can. Have run this economy into a ditch. We're in the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression.
15 million new jobs.
Gentlemen,
if you can't meet the Nixon standard,
the people at home cannot understand either one of you when you speak over each other. I would please ask you to wait until it is that the other is finished.
I was in Washington, D.C. on 9/11. I saw the clouds of smoke rise from the Pentagon.
I was in Virginia, where the Pentagon's
I know you were. We all lived through that day as a nation.
Because the FBI did an investigation.
Gentlemen.
And they concluded that there was no reasonable prosecutor who would take it further.
Senator Kaine, Governor Pence, please.
Unbelievable. I mean, Tim Kaine even interrupted Mike Pence when he was just trying to share a remembrance about 9/11.
Yeah. And
you had to get in where he was.
And it's one of those things where you can tell that Kaine had all these lines that he wanted to get in. He was like, ooh, and I'll say that, ooh, and I'll say this, and ooh, and I'll say the other thing. And then it was just too much when he couldn't quite handle it.
And there were questions online about where was the moderator? Where was the control?
I got to tell you, Megyn, I love politics, but this debate made my head hurt. And unfortunately, Elaine Quijano, the moderator from CBS, let this get careen utterly out of control. Tim Kaine interrupting Mike Pence far more often without much admonition from the moderator. But here's the thing, as Chris was just saying, I mean, Tim Kaine was so determined to throw out as many grenades against Donald Trump as he could, even if they exploded around his body, that in another reference to 9/11, he somehow turned it around to Donald Trump didn't pay his taxes and Mexican rapists, and he kept bringing these things up again and again. Mike Pence, who's a former radio talk show host, tried not to take the bait on every attack against Trump, tried to be a little more...
He took no bait, really.
Yeah, right. Which opens him up to accusations about not defending his guy, but he came across a little more modulated, a little more dignified. I think as time went on, Kaine lost this debate because his attacks were less forceful as they became so scattershot.
What do you make of the Lowry theory that Kaine lost? He didn't care whether he won or lost. He just wanted to mention dogs, pigs, slobs, taxes as many times as humanly possible.
Get there and say the words. Look, these are two very traditional, very normal, very mainstream candidates who are running on a ticket with people who are not normal candidates. These are people who are...
Abnormal.
Right. They're quite, for good or for ill.
So are we. We can relate.
Quite so. But their job is to show normalcy, and they did that. And Kaine and Pence both did this. They both steered around the fundamental questions and issues for their candidates. There was a lot of non-answering that was going on tonight. You sort of expect that, but I think they both ably dodged.
Yeah, they did. They were able dodgers.
Able dodgers.
Great to see you both. Well, as Donald Trump watched this debate, he live tweeted his reaction to what we saw on stage. And we have Trump's hottest takes for you tonight. Joining me now from just outside the debate hall, our chief political correspondent, Carl Cameron. Carl?
Hi, Megyn. Well, Trump tweeted 44 times, including retweets, in that 90-minute debate, which means basically at least once every 2 minutes. And among them, there were some pretty good doozies. They go something like this. Wow, Kaine couldn't go 12 seconds without a lie. Marines are scared of the liar running. He retweeted, Kaine looks like an evil crook out of Batman movies. Then there was Kaine says Hillary and he have plans. She could care less what Kaine thinks. Loving Mike Pence, he's so likable and sensible. Kaine's just talking bull. Hillary Clinton sneers at millions of average Americans. Clinton's close ties to Putin deserve scrutiny. Then there's Kaine's awful. Trump and Pence are the ticket. No more lies. We're ready to see America great again. And he ultimately ended it up congratulating Mike Pence for what he said was a victory. And at one point, he actually criticized the moderator, something that we're likely to hear a lot of in the next couple of days. Megyn?
Carl, good to see you. Well, political analysts suggesting that Senator Kaine's main objective tonight would be to turn Governor Mike Pence into Donald Trump and force Mr. Pence to answer for all of Trump's controversies. Fulfilling those reports, Senator Kaine did not hold back, using several opportunities to bring up a laundry list of Trump controversies. Watch.
Donald Trump during his campaign has called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He's called women slobs, pigs, dogs, disgusting. I don't like saying that in front of my wife and my mother. He attacked an Indiana-born federal judge and said he was unqualified to hear a federal lawsuit because his parents were Mexican. He went after John McCain, a POW, and said he wasn't a hero because he'd been captured. He said African Americans are living in hell, and he perpetrated this outrageous and bigoted lie that President Obama is not a U.S. citizen. If you want to have a society where people are respected and respect laws, you can't have somebody at the top who demeans every group that he talks about. And I cannot believe that Governor Pence will defend the insult-driven campaign that Donald Trump has run.
He says ours is an insult-driven campaign. Did you all just hear that? Ours is an insult-driven campaign. I mean, to be honest with you, if Donald Trump had said all the things that you said he said in the way you said he said them, he still wouldn't have a fraction of the insults that Hillary Clinton leveled when she said that half of our supporters were a basket of deplorables.
Hillary Clinton said something on the campaign trail, and the very next day she said, you know what, I shouldn't have said that. You will look in vain to see Donald Trump ever taking responsibility for anybody and apologizing.
Joining me now, Trump campaign manager Kellyanne Conway. Kellyanne, great to see you.
Hi, Megan.
So what do you make of that exchange where Kane's response was she took responsibility for what she said and apologized?
No, she didn't.
And he's suggesting Trump never has apologized to anybody for anything.
But she didn't, and that's not fair. Let me break it down this way. First of all, because she got caught on tape at a fundraiser with her donors, which is how she usually spends her time, insulting tens of millions of Americans, calling them a basket of deplorables and irredeemable at that. You add to that the Bernie Sanders voters, who we since heard again in a fundraiser or a donor's pitch, where she insulted them as basement dwellers who have this fantastical idea.
She said they're in the basement struggling to make something out of their lives. She didn't say basement dwellers.
It didn't sound very nice. It didn't sound very complimentary. And even Bernie Sanders said he had a hard time listening to that. But the fact is, this woman has disdain for people, in part, and then he said he had a hard time hearing that. But look, Megan, it's very simple. American people know that she has insulted people, that she has disdain for lots of Americans. And I like the fact that Mike Pence brought that up, because the reason he used the word fraction was very clear, that Tim Kaine wants to talk about this comment or that comment by Donald Trump, and yet you have a woman running for president of the United States who has expressed disdain for lots of Americans, and that's why he used the word fraction. The other thing that was happening there is Tim Kaine was never answering the question. He came ready to have spill out of his mouth this unending flow of sound bites and canned responses. They came off terrible. There he was interrupting a female moderator. We lost track of the time. We just stopped writing it down. He was interrupting.
You can interrupt a female moderator, same as a male.
Well, no, it's the Clinton campaign who loves to throw around words like sexism and unhinged. They've got to be regretting those words on a night like tonight when Tim Kaine looked like both.
They got into a long discussion about Putin and what Trump has said about Putin and what he hasn't said, and we had that exchange teed up, and then we have a bit of a fact check. Watch.
Donald Trump again and again has praised Vladimir Putin, and it's clear that he has business dealings with Russian oligarchs who are very connected to Putin.
Let me be very clear on this Russian thing. The larger question here.
Do you think Donald Trump is smart to not pay taxes?
What we're dealing with is there's an old proverb that says the Russian bear never dies, it just hibernates. And the truth of the matter is the weak and feckless foreign policy of Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama has awakened an aggression in Russia.
Things you've said about Vladimir Putin. You said, I will tell you, in terms of leadership, he's getting an A. Our president is not doing so well. And when referring to a comment that Putin made about you, I think he called you a brilliant leader, you said it's always a great honor to be so nicely complimented by a man so highly respected within his country and beyond.
Well, he does have an 82% approval rating. I've already said he is really very much of a leader. I mean, you can say, oh, isn't that a terrible thing? He called, the man has very strong control over a country.
So Trump, he did say that Putin was a leader and compared him favorably to President Obama, and even Mike Pence actually came out and said it's inarguable that Putin is a stronger leader than Obama.
Meaning in their respective countries. Yes, I'm sorry.
What do you mean?
Well,
Putin is a strong leader. Well, do you believe that? Does Donald Trump believe he's a strong leader?
He said he's
that
a
the people follow him because they feel inspired.
And Obama is here, and you just heard Mike Pence use the words feckless leadership. There's no question that we're respected less around the world. There's no question that if Donald Trump and Mike Pence are president and vice president, that the American exceptionalism, the peace through strength in America first.
But Kellyanne, you understand where this argument goes. Putin's had journalists shot in the street. So it's a little jarring for people to hear him praised by Donald Trump as a strong leader, stronger than President Obama.
He's stronger there than he is here. And he also says, if you play the full clip, Megan, he also says in the Commander-in-Chief forum, that he says that I don't necessarily agree with that system of government. That's what Donald Trump said. I was there that night. He says, but he's a strong leader there than Obama is here. Nobody thinks Obama's a strong leader. If Obama were a strong leader, a Secretary of State would have 55%. Why in the new CNN poll is Hillary Clinton at 53% among women? She's running as the first female president. There's something holding her back, and I frankly
she's beating Donald Trump by some 20 points with women. Why is Donald Trump at 32%?
Not really, not in all polls.
Kellyanne.
But she's got a gender gap of her her own.
She does.
She does.
She's losing.
She has a gender gap over men.
She has a huge gap. There's absolutely no question about that. But you're sitting here suggesting why are her numbers low with women, and you work for Donald Trump.
Right, she's the first.
His numbers are historically low for a Republican nominee with women. Historically low.
Well, Mitt Romney lost women by 11 points, and John McCain lost.
Mitt Romney's numbers are crushing Donald Trump's numbers with women.
It's not election day yet. Why are we winning Ohio and Iowa?
There's 35 days to go, Kellyanne. I mean, the criticism of Donald Trump is that he could win this race and that he was doing well and he was rebounding and his numbers in various states were rebounding. And then he went after Miss Universe and talked about her being too fat and talked about women's looks again. And women don't like that, so according to these polls.
I guess I would focus on why we're here, which is the vice presidential debate. I thought Mike Pence did a fabulous job.
Which is all about who should be elected president.
Well, but Megyn, in fairness to Donald Trump, his very first execution of leadership and judgment was what after he became the nominee? His selection of Governor Mike Pence as his running mate. And America saw tonight how wonderful that selection is, because this man, as governor of Indiana, has cut taxes for employers and individuals. The unemployment rate was slashed in half. He's expanded school choice and charters. He's brought manufacturing jobs back. I've worked with Mike Pence for probably 10 years as his Pollster and senior advisor. The guy will make a fabulous vice president. And you juxtapose him against Tim Kaine tonight, who basically spent most of his career in government service, is no stranger to the debate stage. And you think that Tim Kaine's performance tonight is going to sit well with women? I think what you're going to hear from all the pundits. That was my first question to Larry Davis. I think what you're going to hear from all the pundits tonight, these vice presidential debates don't really matter. They won't move the polls because they know how lopsided the victory was for Mike Pence.
I got to go because I got a Clinton campaign representative coming up. We're going to talk about that. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. So for his part, Governor Mike Pence made the case against Hillary Clinton in a way that some critics wanted Donald Trump to do during last week's presidential debate. Here was one exchange getting a lot of attention.
At a time when literally, in the wake of Hillary Clinton's tenure as Secretary of State, where she was the architect of the Obama administration's foreign policy, we see entire portions of the world, particularly the wider Middle East, literally spinning out of control. At a time of great challenge in the life of this nation, where we've weakened America's place in the world, stifled America's economy, the campaign of Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine has been an avalanche of insults. The Clinton Foundation accepted foreign contributions from foreign governments and foreign donors while she was Secretary of State.
Okay, now I can weigh.
She had a private server.
I get to weigh in.
That was discovered to keep that pay-to-play process out of the reach of the public.
Governor Pence doesn't think the world's going so well, and he, is going to say it's everybody's fault.
Do you?
Brian Fallon is the National Press Secretary for Hillary Clinton's presidential campaign. He's with me now. Great to see you.
It's to defend your candidate, the person at the top of the ticket, came under false attacks from Mike Pence, helping make the affirmative case about what Clinton-Kaine administration would do on the economy. And then secondly, you need to make the case against the other person on the other side of the ballot. And I thought that he was extremely effective at making the case about why Donald Trump is temperamentally unfit to be president. And the reason he was so effective was he was citing Trump's own words. And what was most notable, I thought, was that Mike Pence was sort of not engaging at those points. Whether
was that, and let me get to Pence in 1 second, but was that a strategy to have him, it doesn't matter how many times he interrupts, just keep saying these few core messages or launching these few core attacks over and over again?
Well, look, it's easy to seem agreeable if you're not making any case on behalf of your candidate. And Mike Pence, I thought, sort of sat out major portions of the debate where Tim Kaine was calling out statements that Donald Trump has made. And I thought that was perfectly reasonable. And I thought that what was notable was that Mike Pence didn't seem interested in defending some of Donald Trump's more outrageous comments. In the course of his policies, he suggested we should withdraw from NATO, which would put our Eastern European allies at risk. And then tonight we heard a completely different message from Mike Pence. He was talking about how Putin was a bully and he was small. I mean, at the next debate, I hope that Donald Trump will be asked if he agrees with what Mike Pence said. And I think that showed that Mike Pence had his own agenda tonight. And to me, it almost meant that he was auditioning for 2020 more than he cared about electing Donald Trump in 2016.
What about Hillary Clinton's point tonight suggesting that she and President Obama have stopped Iran's nuclear program? I mean, no one thinks it's stopped. At best, it's been curbed at absolute best, but it hasn't been shut down.
Oh, look, there is no question that as a result of the deal that was struck by the Obama administration last year, that we have suspended and put on hold the complete ambitions of the Iran regime to acquire nuclear weapons, the status quo was not going to be tenable. And I think that we are much
stopped. The capability is not gone. At best, it's been paused. It hasn't been stopped. It's been curbed, but it's still in operation. You know that.
We are on much safer footing today vis-a-vis Iran.
But that's a different statement.
Agreement.
That's a different statement. What he said tonight is factually wrong.
I don't think that's true at all.
You believe the Iranian nuclear program has stopped. That's her position and your position.
Yes.
It's stopped. It's over.
Yeah, well...
Congratulations.
Well, no, Kelly, let's be clear. We're not suggesting that the Iranians don't continue to harbor ambitions to pursue nuclear weapons, but their capability to pursue that nuclear program is completely off now. And that's why Hillary Clinton has said we need to take a distrust but verify approach. She doesn't suddenly believe that Iran is an ally of any kind. They're continuing to fund terrorism in the region. They're continuing to sow instability all across the Middle East. And so, yes, absolutely, they still have a mind to pursue nuclear weapons, but they're not going to be able to do so under this agreement.
Let's pick up on the last point that I was discussing with Kellyanne, which is the women, right? And there's a gender gap, and that's true. Trump is definitely struggling with women. But Hillary Clinton is struggling worse with men. The gender gap is worse on her end in getting men. And you tell me what she's going to do, if anything, between now and November 8th to reach out to them.
Well, we always are seeking to reach out to voters that are not currently supporting Hillary Clinton. We're going to continue to do that. But if you look at some of the national polls that came out just yesterday, she is making complete inroads with male voters. And I think that the gap is so much more pronounced among women voters that it's a point where Donald Trump can't recover if those numbers stay the same in terms of that gender gap. And so it's Donald Trump that has more repair work to do with women voters. That's why Hillary Clinton was today in Delaware County in Pennsylvania making the case to women, a lot of them probably Mitt Romney voters in 2012, on issues like pay equity, paid family leave, child care, with her daughter there, with Elizabeth Banks there. I think that was extremely powerful, and that gender gap is going to be irrecoverable for Donald Trump. And unfortunately, tonight there is nothing that Mike Pence could say that would change that dynamic for Donald Trump.
So you see no game changer this evening?
It's impossible for the number twos to change the dynamic. The problem is the guy at the top, Donald Trump.
Great to see you, Brian.
Thanks.
Thanks for being here. Well, there's a lot more just ahead, including from Charles Krauthammer, who says there's one clear loser in tonight's debate, and you might be surprised who that is. Plus, David Wohl and Mo Alithi are next on who came out ahead in a powerful exchange over policing and race. And then Mark Thiessen and Austin Goolsbee weigh in on what happened when this debate went nuclear. Don't miss this.
Ronald Reagan said something really interesting about nuclear proliferation back in the 1980s. He said the problem with nuclear proliferation is that some fool or maniac could trigger a catastrophic event. And I think that's who Governor Pence's running mate is, exactly who President Reagan warned us about.
Senator, that was even beneath you and Hillary Clinton, and that's pretty low. I mean, Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine, and God bless you for it, career public servants, that's great. Donald Trump is a businessman, not a career politician. He actually built a business. Those tax returns that came out publicly this week showed that he faced some pretty tough times 20 years ago. But like virtually every other business, including the New York Times not too long ago, he used what's called net operating loss. We have a tax code, Senator, that actually is designed to encourage entrepreneurship.
But why won't he release his tax return?
Well, we're answering the question about the business thing.
I do want to come back on this.
His tax returns that showed he went through a very difficult time, but he used the tax code just the way it's supposed to be used, and he did it brilliantly.
He stood on the stage last week, and when Hillary said you haven't been paying taxes, he said, that makes me smart. So it's smart not to pay for our military. It's smart not to pay for veterans. It's smart not to pay for teachers. And I guess all of us who do pay for those things, I guess we're stupid.
As you just heard, Donald Trump's tax returns became a heated point of contention between Mike Pence and Tim Kaine tonight. And it's an issue that we could hear more of as we look ahead to the second presidential debate on Sunday, 5 days away. Joining me now, Dr. Charles Krauthammer, syndicated columnist and Fox News contributor. Charles, great to see you. So first, let's just start with, separate and apart from that exchange, your overall thoughts on how the debate went.
Well, unfortunately, the big loser was the moderator. I don't envy her position, but she lost control of the debate very early. The candidates were talking over each other. And this is a pet peeve I have with all moderators, not just this one, although it was worse than this one. You know, towards the end, you were getting really good exchanges of the kind where they were going at each other, quite revealing. And she would say, we have to stop and go on to another subject. To which I would say, why? Who cares about hitting all the points and all? At one point, I was watching some other folks who burst out laughing when she said, yes, but we were going to talk about North Korea. Well, that's less interesting than talking about the top of the ticket. Look, I thought in the end it obviously didn't move the needle because they were each trying to do something completely different and to some extent succeeded. Kaine was trying to spread little nuclear, well, I wouldn't call them nuclear, conventional explosives all over the place by mentioning all the misstatements, outrageous statements that Trump had said. And it's clear that Pence had made a decision not to go down the rabbit hole on every one of these, because otherwise he never would have talked about anything else. But it did make him look defensive. And I didn't do a content analysis, but I would guess that most of the time it was spent defending, or at least with the Pence-Trump team, on the defense. What Kaine tried to do was simply to say, this guy is unreliable, that this guy has the wrong temperament. But Pence's strategy, and I thought he won on tone, he was always calm and collected. It was a kind of Reagan saying to Carter, there you go again, was to simply say, well, perhaps my guy has made misstatements, but your candidate and her people have been in charge for 8 years and in a larger sense for 30 years, and look where we are. Look at the state of the world, and that's what he concentrated on. What he has said, that's what Kaine was talking about, but what Pence talked about is what she had done and not done. And I thought on that, enumerating, for example, the failures with Russia, he did very well.
What do you make of the notion that Trump could be, that the questions about his temperament can be answered or at least assuaged by this calm, cool, collected running mate?
I think to some extent, if you've got a very hot candidate, what you want is a cool number two. You want something to say, well, there's, for example, if Trump had chosen Newt Gingrich, I think he said they were both pirates. And you don't want a two-pirate ticket. You want one guy to be the pirate and the other guy to be the justice of the peace, or perhaps even a minister. And to some extent, Pence presented himself sort of like a minister, reasoned, reasonable, very serious answer, I thought, at the very end on the question of religion. So I think that helps the ticket to whatever extent the vice president can. Unfortunately, he or she usually doesn't.
What did you make of the fact that Trump was tweeting during the debate, calling Tim Kaine names?
That means that the Trump campaign has not succeeded in taking away his cell phone. And that remains like job number one for Kellyanne and the rest of the gang. It was harmless, at least the ones you showed on the screen. But he has shown in the last week that he can tweet in a way that can be very harmful to him. And I don't think he ought to be allowed near one.
I think he's following the old, I got to be me. And
well, that's going to earn me one choice. That's going to earn me at least one choice tweet from Donald, I suspect.
I think I've already received mine tonight. He was just letting me know that Kellyanne was here in the audience and he was out in Nevada and nobody was watching his thumbs. And that became apparent soon thereafter. Charles, great to see you.
My pleasure.
Well, there was a long back and forth tonight when the moderator asked about how both campaigns have addressed the issue of race and policing. Watch this.
The way you make communities safer and the way you make police safer is through community policing. Donald Trump recently said we need to do more stop and frisk around the country. That would be a big mistake because it polarizes the relationship between the police and the community.
Community policing is a great idea. Mm-hmm. To use a broad brush to accuse law enforcement of implicit bias or institutional racism. And that really has got to stop. We ought to assure the public that we'll have a full and complete and transparent investigation whenever there's a loss of life because of police action. But Senator, please, enough of this seeking every opportunity to demean law enforcement broadly by making
Elaine,
the accusation of implicit bias every time tragedy occurs.
Elaine, people shouldn't be afraid to bring up issues of bias in law enforcement. And if you're afraid to have
I'm not afraid to bring that up.
If you're afraid to have the discussion, you'll never solve it.
That's fascinating. Joining me now, attorney and Trump supporter David Wohl and former Democratic National Committee spokesman Mo Alifi. Great to see you both.
Hey.
That was extraordinary, wasn't it? I mean, you don't hear the arguments that articulately bounce back and forth that often in today's debate, which tends to descend into ugly places when you go on, to race in general and race in the police as well. David, your thoughts?
Tim Kaine basically said no stop, no frisk, and if we get skyrocketing murder rates, oh well, because I don't want to offend those people. I thought there was a tremendous counterpunch by Pence in that regard. What he said was, you know what, those people you're talking about offending, those are the victims of the people who aren't stopped, aren't frisked, and carry guns and carry knives and end up killing people in the inner city. So you balance it. I mean, are you talking about worrying about offending people and not so much worrying about them dying at the hands of people who aren't stopped and frisked? I mean, Rudy Giuliani proved it, Megan. I mean, the reality is stop and frisk works. If you're not carrying any weapons, you can go on your merry way. If you are carrying something and you're a felon in possession,
but
you get arrested.
What about the messaging, Mo, as a political matter? What about the messaging to the cops, right, in particular? Because you've got African Americans for whom this is a very big issue, and then you've got cops for whom this is a very big issue, and then the rest of society who watches it and is interested in it, but can't possibly be as powerful to them as those who are directly affected by these policies.
Yeah, I think from just a purely political perspective, we could argue the substance, but just from a purely political perspective, there's really two things at play here. One is Donald Trump keeps saying he wants to do more outreach to the African American community. This is a non-starter in the African American community. Stop and frisk is one of the least popular policies in the African American community. And the second point is, I think the Kaine message in that exchange was very telling, because it basically said, we are safer when there is more trust between the two sides.
Community policing, where they work together.
Right, when they actually work together. Stop and frisk is one of the most divisive tools in recent history. And so if we're going to actually find a way to eradicate this violence, we're going to have to bring the police and the community together. This is not the way to do it.
Murder rates in Chicago are skyrocketing. 3,000 shot this year. I mean, it's absolutely out of control. And the reality is everything that's tried has failed. So the reality is, yes, community policing. Get together with people and say, look, we're going to go up to suspicious people on the streets. We're going to stop and frisk them. If they've got nothing, we're going to apologize for bothering them. But you got to do something.
In New York,
they're getting killed
in New York, the murder
record numbers.
In New York, the murder rate has gone down since stop and frisk was ended. And that shows that this notion
that's just not true. That's just not true.
No, it's
2014 to 2015, it's gone up.
It's absolutely true that it has gone down since it has stopped.
I think the sheer numbers show a slight rise in the murder rate, but the numbers are not huge from 14 to 15, if memory serves. I'll have to fact check myself on that. But there's all different ways of looking at it, because you can look at violent crime, you can look at murders. It's a lovely exercise if you want to walk down that lane. But you tell me whether, because Mike Pence, he sounded very thoughtful about it, and he sounded defensive of police, which is that typically a Democratic voting bloc? I mean, do police, they tend to be working class? They, I mean, the unions and so on, do they tend to vote Democratic? And do you think in an election like this, they'll do so?
You know, I think historically, right? Historically, there are some issues that whoever has the D next to their name gets sort of an automatic, advantage, and whoever has the R next to their name gets an automatic advantage. I think on law enforcement traditionally has been something that Republicans have sort of started off with an advantage on. I don't know if that's the case now. To be honest, I'm not sure either side really has much of an advantage right now. I think the whole notion of safety and public safety and law enforcement and crime, right now both sides there's so much distrust on both sides that I don't know that there is a political advantage to be had other than to try to say, I'm going to keep you safe by bringing a community together.
Cops are a powerful voting bloc, Megan. What's happened in Dallas, 5 cops murdered. In New Orleans, 2 cops murdered. That is very powerful evidence on the Republican side to say, look, we need to support them. There are some bad cops every once in a while, but overall, and Pence had this right, overall they want to do good, they want to help, and they've got to be able to.
Before we go, Tim Kaine got some guff tonight for interrupting too many people. people. And I have to ask you, Mo, whether he interrupted this critical moment that you shared with him years ago. Watch. You tell me whether he was interrupting you or whether he just let this play out as it should have, as you married your beautiful bride.
He did a great job that night.
He married the two of you.
We're still together, so at least that, whether or not you agree with him politically, he does this well.
So you weren't in the middle of like all the days of and so do you.
No interrupting. There was no speak now or forever hold your peace.
And that was beautiful. Congratulations.
That's right. Congratulations. That was very lovely.
I'm a lucky man.
Great to see you guys.
Thank you.
Well, there were also some fierce exchanges tonight on the Iranian nuclear program, on terrorism, and on our domestic security. Nobody did this except for me. Let's start with that last point. Watch.
Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want to increase the Syrian refugee program by 500.
Elaine, I want to tell you about our plan.
Homegrown.
Yeah.
And so, but first, let's make sure we're putting the safety and security of the American people first, instead of Hillary Clinton expanding the Syrian
or
refugee
instead of
program.
you violating the Constitution by blocking people based on their national origin rather than whether they're dangerous.
That's absolutely false.
Hillary and I will do immigration enforcement, and we'll vet refugees based on whether they're dangerous or not. We won't do it based on discriminating against you from the country you come from or the religion that you practice.
The problem with that
is completely antithetical to the Jeffersonian values of equality.
Elaine, the director of the FBI or Homeland Security said, we can't know for certain who these people are coming from Syria.
We can. And when we don't let them know, we don't let them in.
So the
when
FBI,
we don't know who they are, we don't let them in.
The FBI and Homeland Security said, we can't know for certain. You've got to err on the side of the safety and security of the American people, Senator.
Joining us now, two former White House insiders, Mark Thiessen, who's an American Enterprise Institute scholar and a Fox News contributor who served during the Bush administration, and Austan Goolsbee, who's an economics professor at the University of Chicago's Booth School of Business, previously served as President Obama's former chief economist. Good to see you both. Mark, what'd you think?
So, I mean, what he said about Iran was completely and totally untrue. There were tons of foreign policy whoppers in this debate. But number one, Hillary Clinton didn't negotiate the deal. John Kerry did. And number two, it didn't eliminate Iran's nuclear weapons program. It legalized it.
Over and over. And I just had this debate with Brian Fallon, where I was pressing him on the fact that she's claiming it's stopped, that the program has been stopped, it's been eliminated, and that's just not the case.
No, it's not the case at all. What it
Here's
did,
the sound. Here, let's just play it so they know what we're talking about.
She worked a tough negotiation with nations around the world to eliminate the Iranian nuclear weapons program without firing a shot.
Eliminate the Iranian nuclear weapons
Absolutely,
program.
without firing a shot. He doesn't want to acknowledge that we stopped the Iranian nuclear weapons program.
It's been eliminated and stopped.
Except it hasn't. It's been legalized. It hasn't been eliminated. What the deal did was it reduced their nuclear stockpile of materials, and it lengthened their breakout time for when they could have a deal. But it expires in 15 years, and in the meantime, Iran gets to keep its entire nuclear infrastructure. They get to continue developing ballistic missiles. They've had 4 ballistic missile tests since the deal was signed, so they get to develop the missiles to one day deliver the nuclear weapons. And oh, by the way, we gave them $150 billion with which to fund all of this. So far from eliminating Iran's nuclear program, it actually makes it more likely that 15 years from now they're going to be a nuclear weapons
Let's
state.
stop there and go to Austan on that. Austan, why is what Mark just said
offense, but
not
that's
correct?
Not correct at all. Look, as you might imagine, the negotiation and the treaty is far more complex than just a one-dimensional thing. You can develop nuclear weapons on multiple tracks. There are uranium bombs and plutonium bombs. The plutonium, the entire highway was shut down. They filled the plutonium devices and development with concrete. The international inspectors have said there is no way that the plutonium channel is completely shut. The uranium channel, which I might add they had 5,000 centrifuges for during the Bush administration, has been stalled and put off for at least 15 years. So if you're going to say, okay, they have these centrifuges and 15 years from now they can come back and try to reignite them, fine, we can have that debate. But to make the argument that somehow this treaty enabled their nuclear weapons program when their nuclear weapons program started and got to 5,000 centrifuges under the old regime is just totally misleading.
But it's a fact check on whether eliminated was correct, because he said it 3 or 4 times. Go ahead, Mark.
No, he did. And also, I mean, the truth is they continue to keep their nuclear stockpile, and they've had, in fact, we just found out that they had a secret deal deal that we didn't know about between the Obama administration and the Iranians that allowed them, because they were going to be in violation of even getting rid of that low enriched uranium, that they had to change the deal before else they were going to be out of compliance.
I just want to move on to
we can have a negotiation with somebody.
Hold on, Austin. Hold that thought. Hold that thought. What was the other whopper?
Well, the other whopper is just, I mean, he said, quotes, terrorist threat has been decreased on her watch. I mean, good grief. Has he looked at the news in the last few months? I mean, the fact is, when Hillary Clinton came into office in 2009, ISIS was completely defeated in Iraq. In fact, Joe Biden was running around saying Iraq was going to be one of the great achievements of the Obama administration. And then today, ISIS is all over the world. We've got attacks in Paris, Brussels, Nice, San Bernardino, Orlando. They have carried out, according to CNN analysis, 143 attacks in 29 countries that have killed 2,043 people since Barack Obama declared them the JV team. How is that terrorism being decreased?
Austin?
Look, Megyn, we can have a foreign policy negotiation. On the terrorist attacks, you fail to remember, I think, that the primary thing that the Republicans were criticizing was al-Qaeda through the whole early part of the Obama administration. They took out Osama bin Laden. They took out the infrastructure of al-Qaeda. The terrorism coming from Central Asia and Afghanistan has dramatically reduced. It's true we have had a rise of ISIS-sponsored terrorism in Europe, but many of the terrorist actions that you described in the United States were homegrown terrorists. And so the policies of the Trump administration are not based on an intellectual debate like the one that Mark and I are having. Donald Trump's nuclear expertise amounts to using a microwave oven. They have nonsense policies. And in this debate, I don't think we got into enough detail on those policies.
Yeah, I know. All right. Oh, you meant the debate we just watched. I thought you were criticizing me. If you're criticizing
the debate we
what
just
we saw
watched
earlier, that's a totally different story. Austin, great to see you. Mark, you too.
Thanks, Megyn.
Up next, Chris Stirewalt and Tucker Carlson are here on how folks are reacting to what the candidates said about dollars and cents, the economy. Oh, something shocking coming up.
What you all just heard out there is more taxes, $2 trillion in more spending, more deficits, more debt, more government. And if you think that's all working, then you look at the other side of the table. I mean, the truth of the matter is the policies of this administration, which Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine want to continue, have run this economy into a ditch. What you all just heard out there is more taxes, $2 trillion in more spending, more deficits, more debt, more government. And if you think that's all working, then you look at the other side of the table. I mean, the truth of the matter is the policies of this administration, which Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine want to continue, have run this economy into a ditch. We're in the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression.
15 million
There are millions more people living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama, with Hillary Clinton at his side,
and the poverty
stepped
level
into the Oval
and the median
Office.
Governor Mike Pence's claims about the economy already being run through the fact-checking mill, so we called up two of our favorite mill workers, Fox Digital politics editor Chris Stirewalt, along with Daily Caller founder and co-host of Fox and Friends, Tucker Carlson. Good to see you both.
Howdy.
That was just one of the many, exchanges that they went on the economy. They hit everything, little foreign policy and so on. Tucker, overall, did this thing move the needle? Did it move the needle at all?
It's pretty hard to know. I mean, it wasn't bad for Trump. I think it's pretty clear that Pence won. But in winning, did he benefit anyone more than himself? I don't know. I do think there's a pretty large reservoir of voters who are open to voting for Trump, but they're afraid of him. They think he's, he's flaky, basically, and volatile. And did Pence's kind of calm, rational performance help? I don't know. I think on the Kaine side, clearly he was not there to win. I really don't think he was. This was a human sacrifice. He wanted to remind, the demographics that they're worried about in terms of turnout, which would be African American, Latino, and single female voters, that Trump is really bad. In case you somehow didn't hear this, in the last year, he said these awful things about you. That's what this was about.
Yep. And did he do that effectively? I mean,
I mean, the number one goal, it's the Hippocratic oath as it applies to running mates. First, do no harm. Whatever else you do, don't do any harm. Tim Kaine didn't help himself. Mike Pence helped himself, and probably a lot of doctrinaire conservative Republicans will have watched Mike Pence and said, I like that guy. Maybe someone will say, I wish he was the top of the ticket, but he will be at least reassuring to those sort of
How about Kellyanne's suggestion that Kaine did do harm by, she was suggesting it was sexist to interrupt the moderator?
Yeah.
Not feeling that.
I mean, look, this is the vice presidential debate. Vice presidential debates are remembered only when there is a catastrophic failure of some kind or some just astonishing thing happens. You served with Jack Kennedy. You, sir, are no Jack Kennedy, said Lloyd Benson.
But even in that race, Dan Quayle won.
And it don't matter. It ain't matter. That's just the truth. Right.
It might help remind people that on the merits, it's pretty tough to defend the last 8 years on the foreign policy side and on the economic side. I mean, clearly, and I think you saw Pence allude to this, but we are facing some really ominous signs on the horizon. I mean, who doesn't think there's a debt crisis, at least potentially coming our way? Yep. And that's the result of decisions that the people in power made. And so maybe to the extent that he reminds people of that, it's got to help Trump, no?
And I think maybe...
Well, the nonpartisan fact checkers who look into it suggest that Trump's plan is going to add $5 trillion to the debt.
Well, sure. I mean,
look, so I don't know.
But it's not...
Tell me whether it helps him.
But it's not... I mean, you can certainly make that case. I don't think it's a crazy thing to say. But it's not a contest between two incumbents. Really, all Trump needs to do is say, these people have failed, and I'm not so scary that you can't vote for me.
Yeah, is it just me, or is like, listen, temperament is important.
Yep.
Yes.
Nuclear codes and all that. If Trump is a misogynist, that's important.
Right.
Half the country happens to be women.
What?
Yeah, and many of the other half has little
This
girls.
could be big.
Right. This is big. But we've heard precious little about ISIS and terror and threats to the homeland and things that actually have people very concerned.
If there is one thing that Donald Trump could have been helped by in this debate, it was if he watched Mike Pence closely to see how you do that. So I absorb the blow, you attack me, okay, and then you say, whatever, you're a jerk, and then you pivot it. And he did it on emails, and he did it on Iran, and he did it on ISIS. And time again, when the attack came on Pence, he ably absorbed and deflected. So if Trump was watching tonight and he was taking notes, this is how you do that.
He clearly was.
Right.
His notepad begins with a T and ends with an R.
It's got a little bird on it.
But I wonder, I mean, there one point stuck to me because I'm interested in the subject, but it was very revealing. You saw Tim Kaine say, our number one priority in our immigration policy is reuniting families, which is great for the families.
That was a myth.
But of course, the point of your immigration policy is to help your country. And if the Trump people, I think, are clever, they will exploit that because that is one of the central...
But Trump's already got the people to whom immigration is important. He said they're already in his camp, are they not? But I want to ask you this. You can answer that, and then talk about the fact that we have a presidential debate happening in 5 days.
Yes.
5 days. So whatever news comes out of this gets squashed, I guess, soon, because we're going to be focused on the top of the ticket. As fascinating as Pence and Kaine are.
And I'd be surprised if the Trump people want to keep 3 days from now talking about how great Pence is. I just
doesn't sound like Trump.
Don't see that. Right. But I do
Whose name we found out tonight is not even on the Trump website. That Governor Mike Pence is not mentioned.
That's
apparently.
True. But I got to say, you know, if you watch this, what was so good about Pence? He was, you know, he's kind of calm and rational. I don't know. I think that is a good lesson that is obvious.
Steady, stable, lots of ballast, sober-sided, seemed like an ordinary politician in some ways, but in other ways he seemed like a guy who was a leader who was
But now what? Now what? 5 days away from the next presidential debate.
This will evaporate like a popsicle on a hot sidewalk. This does not have staying power. It was good to be here, but it ain't going to last.
And on that note, get out. Great to see you. We'll be right back with some final thoughts after this. So some on Twitter are suggesting that a Trump advisor is out there saying Pence won overall but lost with Trump because he didn't defend Trump at every turn. But in the meantime, Donald Trump is tweeting this himself. Mike Pence won big. We should all be proud of Mike. What do you think? Let us know. Go to foxnews.com. I don't know, /Facebook. It was on Facebook.com/Kelly File. On Twitter @Megyn Kelly. Let me know what you think. Thanks for watching, everybody. I'm Megyn Kelly. Live edition of Hannity starts right now.
To Fox News, it's the